Mr. Mayor. We do have two items that we would like a motion to add to the agenda. They relate to one of the motions listed on tonight's agenda. So on a motion by Councillor Stewart and seconded by Councillor Kaur, be it resolved that the agenda be amended to include the addendum item 8.4.1 and 8.5.7. So we could call for any additional changes to the agenda.
Okay. Any councillors have any further changes to make to the agenda? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk.
So I'll call on the amendment, starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. So now to the agenda as amended, moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the agenda for the January 11th, 2021 regular meeting of Council be adopted as amended. Starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries.
Okay. And after looking at the agenda, does any councillor have a pecuniary interest and general nature thereof to declare? Madam Clerk, I see no one.
Thank you, so noted.
Thank you. And before we continue with any other agenda items, just like to give a shout out to our Public Works road crews for the great job they did of clearing the snow from the town streets during our one and only, so far, major snowfall of this winter. On Christmas Eve, Public Works sanded and salted our roads on a high priority basis. Such streets as Sailors Hill on Effingham Street were one of many that got the treatment. Snow clearing itself started at 3 a.m. Christmas morning, with operations being completed by noon on Christmas Day, having to deal with a total of 15 centimeters during this time. It goes without saying that the dedication of the Public Works staff to keeping our roads clean and safe throughout the holiday season and indeed throughout the year is greatly appreciated by council and town residents alike. Thank you very much, people, for doing a great job. Madam Clerk, we will now continue with presentations, I see.
Thank you through you, Mr. Mayor. The first item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update from the Community Emergency Management Coordinator, Fire Chief Bob Limburner.
Chief Limburner, you're got the floor.
Thank you, Mayor, Council, Senior Leadership Team, and all the members of viewing public. Just a few updated numbers here. As of today, Pelham has a total number of cases of 189. Total active is 54. We currently have no municipalities with 0 active cases. Everybody has something going on. Across the region, we have 5,675. Public Health reported 471 cases today. Total active is 1,438. Total resolved 4,004. And total number of deaths is 196. I'll go back to those two numbers. So the Pelham total seems to be quite high, and the Niagara total for today, 471, is quite high. 388 of that 471 are past cases that were cleaned up. They had a problem through public health with reporting all the cases up to date, so that was like cleaning up the backlog, and that's brought that up to the total. So the actual number of cases today is active cases today was 86 in the region. So that 471 is a bit of a scary number, but it's a backlog. Ontario total cases at 219,120. Total resolved 183,476. Total number of deaths in the province is 5,012. Ontario hospital admissions, 1,563 people have been admitted. Out of those, 387 are in ICU units, and out of those, 268 are on ventilators. Across the country, we're at 664,378 total cases, 562,683 for resolved, and our death toll for the country is 17,018. Niagara Region's case doubling time is down to 19 days. Our reproduction level is 1.6. As I've said many a times, anything over 1, the virus grows. Positivity rate is at 6.3. The region public health are currently working with 51 active outbreaks. They've resolved 121. As far as infection goes, close contact is 58.9%. And a really startling number that's come up in the last week and a half is the unknown. It's climbed up to number 2, and that's presently at 23% of all cases are unknown. Community spreads at 14.3 and travel 3.1. As far as across the males, it's 42.8%, females 57.2. As far as the weekly enforcement goes, there was 63 inspections done, 6 charges were laid, and 10 warnings were issued. Today, the province and the region cleared up a topic on dog grooming, and they cleared up dog grooming is not deemed essential, so we will not be allowing any dog grooming, even if it's curbside pickup. It's not allowed to operate. And Niagara will receive its first shipment of the vaccine this week, and they will be starting to roll out the vaccination program shortly thereafter. That's the end of my report. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Chief. Any councillor have any questions about the Chief's report? Not seeing any. I guess just a comment that I would like to make, if I could. The fact that the Niagara region is just getting our first vaccine, as opposed to other regions that have had the vaccine since December 14th or around the 18th, I believe. The reason the region is running on the late side is because when it was determined who got the vaccines first, it went to the hot spots or the red zones. And because the region was in gray, it bumped us back. It is heartening to hear, though, Chief, that this week, either the middle or the end of, as you say, I believe the first vaccines will be coming to the region. And I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, that senior homes and LCTs will be given the priority dosages, correct?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, yes, that's correct. The vaccines are going to be administered through the NHS system, and they do have a priority list of people that will receive it, starting with our LTCs and our most vulnerable people, our frontline workers that are involved in the COVID operations, and then it'll filter down through. So it's going to take some time to get to the general public.
Yes, thank you for that, Chief Limburner. Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Hildebrand, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from B. Limburner, Fire Chief and Community Emergency Management Coordinator for information. This vote starts with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the COVID-19 update from the Chief Administrative Officer, David Cripps.
Mr. CAO, you have the floor.
Good evening, Council. As an update, I'd just like to inform you that town administration is in the early phases of a negotiation with regional staff to see if there is some need for potential secondment of staff from the town to the region. The region, of course, is the lead in the COVID, in most aspects of governance and COVID in Niagara, and it is finding itself in need of additional help and support We're looking to see if there's a match of skills, possibly wherein we might be able to second some staff to the region to support its critical operations, particularly in public health and long-term care. More details on that will be made available as the issue unfolds. With respect to town operations, Public Works is predominantly operating as per norm, or at least as it has prior to the gray lockdown. With the additional safety protocols, but it's essentially able to provide all of its services. At Town Hall, we're running with half or slightly fewer than half staff on any given day. And the others, the balance are working from home, and we're trying to schedule. And in fact, time at the office is sort of a cherished thing you kind of fight for. I'm happy to report. And with respect to staff at the MCC, we have a number of different initiatives ongoing at the moment. I can report that in the months prior to the shutdown, we were averaging 20,000 visitors per month into the MCC in any given month. So there are, in fact, some maintenance tasks to be done there. In addition to that, there's a repainting project at Old Pelham Town Hall. And some staff have been seconded over to Public Works and are assisting with trail maintenance, collecting garbage in the parks, etc. Maintenance that we don't normally do in the winter season, but are able to offer. And in fact, there's much heavier trail usage this year than is the norm, of course. And so that seems to be being put to good use. So with that general comment on staff activities, that concludes my report. Thank you.
Councilor Cora, you have a question. No, oh, I'm sorry. Yes. On mute. Councilor Cora?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CEO. Do we have a strategy with the curfew if they impose it in the next 2 or 3 days?
Well, I can inform you that the EOC is prepared to, we're all waiting for an announcement of some sort. It's not certain that it's going to be a curfew, and there will be some challenges, particularly around the issue of enforcement. I can tell you, though, that I anticipate us calling a meeting late tomorrow afternoon to manage what the town's response needs to be to whatever is announced by the Premier tomorrow. So I won't mislead you and say we have all the bases covered. We do not. We are planning to meet, and we are in discussion with our equivalents, both around the region and outside of the region, to sort of get on as many best practices as immediately, we hope.
Thank you.
Any other questions for the CAO? Go ahead, Councilor Hahn.
Through the mayor, it's not so much a question, I guess, as a statement. And because of COVID, and we know that kids aren't in school right now, they do have a little bit more time on their hands than usual. So unfortunately, it was brought to my attention by a neighbor, actually, who was out walking today, that he noticed some kids playing on the stormwater management ponds. So that's very alluring for young kids. So just wondering if we can maybe tackle whether it's some signage or of the like to ensure that kids are staying away from areas that look like they're frozen and they shouldn't be on. That's a pretty important thing to do because they do have the time on their hands right now to be out and about and not in school.
Well, thank you for bringing that to our attention. We'll have signage up tomorrow.
Thank you.
One question I have for the CEO. The town staff to the region, is that on also a strictly voluntary basis?
It would, that's certainly the nature of the discussion at this time.
Okay.
And outside of a emergency staffing level, I would imagine that would be the case.
Oh, okay. Thank you, sir. Not seeing any questions, I will return to the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. Moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that Council receive the COVID-19 update presentation from D. Cripps, Chief Administrative Officer, for information. Starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
and Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
Yes?
And that motion carries. You, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is Upper Canada Consultants with regard to Lavender Fields. Mr. William Highcoop is the delegation, and he is in the meeting now, I see.
Okay,
Yes.
Mr. Haycoop, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm just going to get my PowerPoint presentation going here, if you don't mind. And can you see that okay?
Yes?
All right. So thanks for having me here this evening. As noted, my name is William Highcoop. I'm a planner with Upper Canada Consultants, representing the owner of the Lavender Fields development, Grey Forest Homes. I'm here this evening regarding a request of council to pass a motion to allow us to apply for minor variances on the subject site. Just to go to the next slide, here you can see the proposed development. This is located within the Saffron Meadows Phase 3 overall project, which was a draft plan of subdivision and a zoning amendment that was approved by yourselves in 2019. That proposed development is located directly west of the existing Saffron condo that was constructed by Grey Forest Homes over the last couple of years along Port Robinson Road. As noted, my appearance in front of you this evening is to request that council pass a motion to waive the 2-year zoning freeze or moratorium on the property, since we had a zoning amendment completed in 2019. There's 2 primary reasons for this. First, there was an oversight by UCC, and the approved provisions aren't exactly identical to what the Saffron condo zoning provisions are. So that's point number 1. And point number 2 was the builder, when the Saffron 3 draft plan was approved, was not known. And so now that it is known, Grey Forest will be developing a block. We are looking to bring that site in the exact same zoning as what exists on the Saffron condo today. So just to demonstrate some of the changes that we're going to be applying for should we be allowed. The first is to allow for a sufficiently sized rear yard deck. Right now they're required to be 4.5 meters from the property line, or approximately 13 feet. The Saffron condo allows it to be 2 meters from the rear property line, or approximately 6 or 7 feet. So that's what we're looking for in regard to rear decks. The second item we're looking for is to increase the exterior side yard. So as you can see, the street D alignment isn't exactly square, whereas we construct houses that are square, generally speaking. So due to the geometry of the site and street D being angled, we're looking for an increase just to allow that exceedance in that straight wall, so we don't have an angled living room. And the last one we are looking for is to allow porches within 1.5 meters of the front property line. Here you can see the proposed dwellings are in the exact same alignment as the adjacent dwellings on Port Robinson Road. There's approximately 10 meters of space, and that ranges, as Port Robinson Road isn't exactly straight, but approximately 10 meters between the property line and the curb line. So I just wanted to point out what some of those changes were to you. We're not looking for changes or approval on those changes tonight. We're just looking for an opportunity for council to allow us to proceed to the Committee of Adjustment to then make application and proceed to a meeting. So thank you for the time to delegate to you this evening. If you have any questions on the specifics, I'm certainly able to answer them. Thank you.
Thank you for the presentation. Is there any questions from any councillors? Does the Director of Planning wish to speak on this issue?
Mr. Mayor, through you, thank you. As indicated by Mr. Highcoop, what they are seeking is essentially permission to apply to the Committee of Adjustment for minor variances. If council were to allow for that to happen, it doesn't predetermine what the Committee of Adjustment outcome will be. You are not giving council any position whether you support or don't support the minor variances. It just merely allows the applicant to apply and proceed to the Committee of Adjustment. So this is I guess a change that happened to the Planning Act a few years ago, where new zoning bylaws are adopted by council. There is a provision for a 2-year freeze before you can consider minor variances, unless there is a resolution by council indicating that the minor variance application could proceed. And so that's the purpose of this request tonight. So it's merely the applicant requesting permission to proceed to the Committee of Adjustment for minor variance.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Director. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, if there are no questions by members of council, we'll proceed with the motion. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that council receive the delegation from William Highcoop, Planner, Upper Canada Consultants, and that council grant an exemption to the 2-year waiting period for minor variance and thereby allow Upper Canada Consultants for Grey Forest Homes to file an application to the Town's Committee of Adjustment for minor variances as it pertains to Block 178 of Saffron Meadows Phase 3, now known as Block 1, Plan 59M481. The vote starts with Councillor Stewart.
No.
And Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
That motion carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a delegation by Stephen Seuss with regard to a request to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. And our deputy clerk is just letting Mr. Seuss into the meeting. And I see that Mr. Seuss is in the meeting. He's just connecting. Sorry, I was on mute. I see that Mr. Seuss is in the meeting. He's just connecting to audio, so I'm certain he will be able to begin his delegation momentarily.
Mr. Zeus, are you there?
Yeah, I can just see the screen looping to connect him to audio.
I feel that the Jeopardy soundtrack would add value right now.
That's a,
So I understand that Mr. Seuss is experiencing some technical difficulties on his end. So we'll just give it a few more minutes, and if we can't connect, then maybe we'll have a motion to defer the presentation to a future meeting. I know that Mr. Seuss has presented to other councils, so I'm not certain what the issue is.
could we,
Oh, Mr. Seuss, are you in now? Are you able to use your audio?
Yes, I am. I apologize.
Perfect.
Mr. Zeus, you have the floor.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your indulgence, Chair. Can everyone hear me all right?
I believe so.
Okay, I was just having some technical difficulties. I apologize.
No problem.
Okay, so tonight I am here to present on the state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. So I'm going to start off by saying that I want to thank some of the counselors who reached out to me, particularly Counselor Olson and Counselor Stewart, who really listened to what I had to say about the state of emergency. And currently, Niagara is faced with 475 overdoses from the months of January to June 2020, with an increase from 335 last year. And that's a large amount of people. And currently, Niagara, as of 2018, have 625 homeless residents, and 144 of those are children. Now, we don't have an accurate update of that because Niagara Counts 2020 was canceled due to the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic, but the estimated numbers right now are over 800 homeless residents. In Welland alone, the wait list for affordable housing for people under 55 years old is 16 years. So right now, we are at a point where we need to take action. And the state of emergency is effective because it allows the municipality, in this case, the Niagara Regional Municipality, to increase procurement bylaws around the issues, more crisis lines, more staff to take care of the issue, more office space, if you will. So we can't get that unless we call a state of emergency on the matter. This is about resources, and we need to show the province that we are serious about the issues of mental health, homelessness, and addiction. And I want to tell council this. It's already outlined in our strategic plan to deal with these issues. It's outlined in the regional strategic plan, sorry. And so I want everybody to consider taking action on this immediately, because the province, if you look at the difference between Hamilton and Niagara, you will see that Hamilton receives double the funding for their services that Niagara receives for theirs. And we have the same population. So to me, that doesn't make a lot of sense. And I think we need to take this action to challenge the funding formula at hand so that we can receive the same kind of support that other municipalities are receiving for these issues. In terms of I talked to Councillor Olson about the matter of isolation, and I presented to West Lincoln Council a few weeks ago, and I talked to them about the fact that transportation can certainly be a barrier to accessing these services. When you're in a smaller area municipality and you don't necessarily have the transportation to get to St. Catharines, to get to Niagara Falls for the walk-in counseling, when at such time they will be available, those are all barriers. And Pelham is experiencing that currently. So this isn't just a matter of one municipality facing these issues. It's all our Niagara municipalities. So I wanted to make that point about rural municipalities and how important, you know, Councillor Olson and Councillor Stewart represent the great area of Fenwick, which I ran in, and I want everybody to know that these issues are prevalent in those areas as well. There was actually a study put out that around youth mental health and around rural isolation that I would like everybody to go look at through the Niagara This Week. So these issues aren't just affected by St. Catharines, Niagara Falls, Welland. It's all our Niagara area municipalities that have to play a part in handling these issues. As you know, councillors, the Voice of Pelham recently, a few weeks ago, put out an article about some vulnerable individuals in the community of Pelham and how they wanted to proceed with those issues. And so I think this is a good show of faith if the second-tier municipality of Pelham supports the call for a state of emergency, as 7 out of 12 of the current Niagara municipalities have already done. And so I'm going to yield the rest of my time because I think that this issue has been debated vigorously. I think that most of Niagara is on board with this, and I'll answer any questions that council has at this moment.
Okay, thank you for that presentation, Mr. Zeus, and I see we have questions. Councillor Kaur?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Steve, what was the dollar difference between the Hamilton and Niagara region? Do you have that number?
Councillor Kaur, I do have the number, and it's Hamilton are almost funded double the capacity that we are funded at.
Is it 500,000, 100,000? Do you have that?
I'm not sure on the specifics, Councillor Kaur. I just know through my research and through conversations with other municipal figures that Hamilton is receiving double the capacity that Niagara is.
And when did that funding come?
I'm not sure on that, Councillor Kaur.
Thank you, sir.
No problem.
Any other questions? I see Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Seuss, for your presentation. We did indeed talk about the issues of social isolation and the barriers to access to different things like food banks and the broadband. And the greatest barrier to food bank usage is transportation, and that's why we also need to optimize the NRT, and we have to expand the broadband use because the isolation of some of the young scholars learning at home, trying to learn at home on a internet that barely handles telephone calls is starting to tell on people. And I hear from people in the community that this is becoming very isolating for the young people as well. So again, thank you for your presentation and for speaking so well on these topics, so eloquently on these topics.
Mr. Mayor, may I respond to that point?
Yes, go ahead.
All right. So, yeah, I want to thank Councillor Olson, and of course, I want to thank him for his, recent election campaign. He did a phenomenal job, and if I couldn't win, I wanted Councillor Olson to be the guy that did. And but I want to answer your point on the social isolation front, because we've spoke on these issues. COVID-19, councillors, makes it difficult to access essential services because of the scale back that a lot of services are doing. They can only meet with people virtually. They can only meet with, let's take Niagara Health, for example. So if you wanted a psychiatrist appointment, councillors, you would have to not only speak to a screener at first, but you would have to speak to the screener first, and then somebody who's actually going to book your appointment. So there are actually a lot of increased barriers that have been presented in the social services because of COVID-19. And that scale back is very problematic for us. And I think that Councillor Olson, I think you hit the nail right on the head, because the only way that we can solve these issues is through increased procurement, more staff, more crisis lines, more resources dedicated to the issue, not 10 years down the line like the Built for Zero project proposes, but resources right now. So the state of emergency, Councillor Olson and Council, it talks about a response that is coordinated through the POEC immediately through the province, instead of something that happens 10 years down the line. I think we need to deliver those resources and that type of procurement here and now for the people of Niagara, instead of making them play the long game when it comes to affordable housing wait lists and other types of services.
Thank you, Mr. Zeus. Any other questions? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Seuss. I'm not sure if you're aware, but the federal government has passed having a crisis line, 988, and this council has passed a motion in support of it recently.
Yes, Council. So if I may respond, Chair.
Yes.
Through the Chair, I'm aware of the 988 crisis line federally, absolutely. But the state of emergency, Councillor Stewart, is something that you know, requests to the province for more resources than just drop in the bucket type of things. I'm happy with the progress of the federal 988 line. I think it's a great start, but I also think that we need a much bigger picture strategy here when it comes to dealing with the issues of mental health, homelessness, and addiction. So, you know, I will cop that out to a victory, and the 988 line is certainly great that the federal government is implementing, but my motion through the state of emergency talks about, you know, dedicating vigorous resources through the province right away to deal with everything at hand. Because you know what? If we sit here, Councillor Stewart, and we ignore these issues and we let them go 5 years, 10 years, 15 years down the line, we will have a real crisis on our hands if we don't take action, you know, today or tomorrow.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other comments, Councillor Stewart?
No, that's fine. Thank you, Mr. Seuss.
Okay,
Thank you, Councillor Stewart.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Mr. Seuss. Thanks for your report. The question I have for you, have you approached regional council as this is their responsibility, and what is their response to your request?
That's a great, through the chair, that's a great question, Councillor Hildebrand, because I have been in contact with several regional representatives. There are many regional representatives who are very interested in tackling this issue, in moving the state of emergency. But I want to allow the second-tier municipalities to have the vote on it before I do an actual presentation to the region. So I want to allow, so far I have 7 out of 12 of the municipalities in favor of calling for the declaration on state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. I would like the town of Pelham to be my 8th municipality in favor, and at which point, if the call to action through the second-tier municipalities is stronger, that will yield a better result when I approach the region on the ask. Thank you, Chair.
Anything else, Councillor Hildebrand?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Obviously, like all of us, Mr. Seuss, at the region, I'm sure it's a budget issue. And there's a lot of budget constraints. So I would have thought you would have approached the region at this point already and gone over to state what your case is. I'm not against supporting you, but I'm not sure that what great influence.
Councillor Hildebrand, yeah.
Go ahead, Mr. Seuss.
Sorry, is Councillor Hildebrandt completed his question?
I thought so. Councillor Hildebrand, but
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Hildebrandt, I will, through the chair, I will respond to that question, and you make an excellent point. But I think it's important to, I mentioned the call to action, and I think it's important for every second-tier municipality to get to voice their opinion on this matter. As we've seen, Councillor Hildebrandt, a lot of mental health, homelessness, and addiction services have been downloaded onto the second-tier municipality. You take the example of Port Colborne with their walk-in counseling initiative through Passstones. They were asked to do that, but really that should have been a regional responsibility. Now, I want to include the second-tier municipalities because I think that it's important to have all of Niagara on board with this, because what's better if Stephen Seuss shows up to the region and fights for the state of emergency, or if Stephen Seuss and 10, 11, or 12 of Niagara area municipalities show up to the region and support this move. I think the call to action is important, and I think that all voices are important in deciding a matter like this, Councillor Hildebrandt.
Councillor Hildebrand, any further comments?
No, thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other councillor have a question for Mr. Zeus? Not seeing any. Stephen, if I can make a couple of comments. Number one, the region, as every government in Canada realizes there's a problem. Unfortunately, it seems to be a problem that eludes a quick solution. For sure, the 16-year waiting list for a group that you stated is an embarrassment to every politician in Canada. I can't imagine being on a waiting list for 16 years. It is unfortunate that COVID has pushed the opiate addiction problem off to the side. As you stated, it's up over 100 in Niagara alone, and I know that every province is seeing a vast increase in addiction deaths. So I'd just like to thank you for the time and effort that you have obviously put into this presentation, and for coming and bringing it to council tonight. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, and I appreciate the comments, Mayor Junkin. I once again, I encourage a councillor to move a motion to council support in terms of the state of emergency. This doesn't cost the taxpayers any money. You're simply asking the region to take a certain action. So I would hope somebody would move the motion as so.
Thank you, Mr. Zeus, and I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you. And through you, moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Hildebrandt. Be it resolved that Council receive the delegation from Stephen Seuss requesting Pelham to request the Niagara region to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction for information. And whereas, according to the Province of Ontario Emergency Response Plan, Canadian municipalities are free to declare states of emergencies in response to any situation or impending situation caused by the forces of nature, an accident, an intentional act, or otherwise that constitutes danger of major proportions to life or property. Whereas approximately 625 residents, including 144 children in Niagara, were counted as homeless in March of 2018, with shelter occupancy operating at 109.4% capacity. Whereas Niagara Emergency Medical Systems reported EMS 335 suspected opiate overdoses from January to June of 2019. Whereas some Niagara area municipalities have had services such as mental health removed from their hospitals, and whereas Niagara is severely lacking in mental health and addiction services, therefore be it resolved that the town of Pelham requests the Niagara region to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. Furthermore, the Niagara Regional Council, Niagara Region Public Health and Social Services, Premier of Ontario, the Provincial Minister of Health, Minister of the Attorney General, Minister of Children, Community and Social Services, the Minister of Municipal Affairs and Housing, and the Leader of the Official Opposition, as well as the Prime Minister of Canada. All regional municipalities and all local area municipalities within the Niagara region be copied on this resolution. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion.
Any further discussion on the motion put forward? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you, and this vote starts with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Definitely yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor, that motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
So the Clerk's Department will do that follow-up letter correspondence tomorrow.
Mr. Mayor, I'd like to thank Pelham Council personally for supporting the motion of council support. That brings us to 8 municipalities in favor in Niagara for the request to declare a state of emergency on mental health, homelessness, and addiction. I thank you all very much for that.
Again, thank you for your presentation, and I'm sure you'll have continued good luck with the remaining municipalities. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. There is no regional report this evening. The next item on the agenda is the adoption of minutes, moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that the following minutes be adopted as printed, circulated, and read. SC 17 of 2020, Special Council Minutes of December 15th, 2020, and C-21 of 2020, being the Council Minutes of December 14th, 2020. Mr. Mayor, if you'd like to call for errors or omissions.
Any errors or omissions? And I see Councillor Olson has his hand up. Councillor?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I have business arising from the minutes.
Thank you. We'll get to that after the vote then.
Yep, okay. After the vote then, Councillor. Any other errors or omissions on the minutes? Not seeing any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. The vote will start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, Councillor Olson did wish to raise an issue of business arising from the minutes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. At our last meeting, we had a presentation from the airport, and at that time we discussed the need for our financial statements, and including a balance sheet and income statements for 2021, as well as a forecast for 2020. And it was suggested by their chair that they would present a who does what presentation for us. And in view of the COVID and the season and et cetera, I was hoping to see that and for this meeting and attach that to my motion later on. But in view of the circumstances, I would like to defer my motion and have it allow for another month to receive those documents and give the airport authority a chance to, or the airport commission a chance to make another presentation perhaps of those items.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Wink, you are the seconder on that motion. Do you have any comments to make?
No, I concur with Councillor Olson.
Okay, thank you, sir. Madam Clerk?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, when we get to that motion on the agenda, I'm happy to entertain a motion to defer consideration. I see that Councillor Hahn has her hand up.
No, I'm sorry, Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, so to Councillor Olson, when you said the who does what do you mean by the who does what report? Can you just be more specific on that?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I took that to mean that it was going to be a presentation on the, and that was not my words, those were the words of the chair, to describe what the roles and responsibilities of the Airport Commission were vis-a-vis the roles and responsibility of council. That's what I took it to mean.
Through the mayor, in addition, so you had asked for the forecast. We provided you our 2021 budget. And I'm sorry, can you please allude to what other reports are still outstanding?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I received 3 items that purported to be a budget for the airport, and none of the numbers on them matched up. The only item that matched up from the 3 items I had were 154,770, which was the ask from the municipal partners. I would also like to see a bank balance that goes along with this, and I was looking for a balance sheet that shows the bank balance, because I understand there's more than $200,000 in the bank that the commission is holding. So I think that's pertinent data for our considerations.
Yep, go ahead, Councilor Hahn.
If I could just respond to that, if you would be so kind as to itemize a list and you can send that to me, that would be most helpful.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I will do that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other discussion on this? Not seen any. Madam Clerk?
So the next item on the agenda, through you, Mr. Mayor, is the consent agenda. So if there are any items to be lifted, this is the appropriate opportunity to do so.
And Council, after viewing the consent agenda items, is there any item that a councillor would like to lift? Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to lift 85. Let's see, 85.42, 85.6, 85.61.
Okay, so just for clarity, it's point 8.5.2 NPCA board meeting highlights?
No, it would be, let me see here. It was 85.42, Mike Jones and the Pelham Tree Conservatory.
Okay. 8.5.4.2.
Yeah,
Mike Jones.
8.5.6 for the letter of objection conditions, and the following item is the response.
8.5.61.
That's right. That's correct.
And 16. Okay. Okay, so
Yeah.
nothing further?
Any other items to be listed by any other councillors? Not seen any, Madam Clerk?
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Corr, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the consent agenda items as listed on the January 11th, 2021 council agenda be received and recommendations contained therein be approved as applicable. Firstly, presentation and recommendations arising from the public meeting under the Planning Act of December 14th and the approval of the same meeting minutes. And the October 2020 financial report, be it resolved that council receive the report, 2020 financial report of October for information. Second dwelling units report to be received for information as it pertains to proposed second dwelling units policies and regulations and next steps. Action correspondence, firstly from Upper Canada Consultants, request to defer the motion with regard to the Pelham Trail system. And that was the addendum that was added. Information correspondence, there's a report of the Integrity Commissioner to be received for information. The NPCA board meeting highlights to be received for information. Correspondence from the region for information, clerk's report CLC C 2022-44 and 2022-45. Additional correspondence with regard to the Steve Bauer Trail and development applications. From Mary Knoll to be received for information. And the item from Mr. Jones has been deferred. Correspondence from Cheryl McDavid with regard to the trail. Tanya Blankenberg with regard to the trail. Jack and Brenda Braybook with regard to 3 Hurricane Road to be received for information. 8.5.6 and 8.5.6.1 are referred. for next consideration. And then there is one final item asked or added this evening. It's correspondence from the Burkout family with regard to the Pelham Trail system, as well as receiving for information the Cannabis Control Committee minutes for October 28th of 2020 and the Pelham Art Advisory Committee minutes of February 19th, 2020 and November 18th, 2020. So if there are any questions or comments that don't result in a change in motion on any of those items.
Any comments on the item stated by the clerk? If not, I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you. For the vote, it will begin with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda then will be the moved item 8.5.4.2, correspondence from the Tree Conservation Society, and the motion included with the consent agenda was be it resolved that council received correspondence dated December 15th, 2020 from Mike Jones, the Pelham Tree Conservation Society, regarding the town of Pelham tree policy under development for information.
Mr. Olson, Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, and I want to say thank you to the Pelham Tree Conservation Society for inviting me to their walk on the Steve Bauer Trail. And during that walk, we had a conversation about what type of standard we should achieve with our tree programs in the town. And I'm of the opinion that we've done very well on our various endeavors, such as the Marcon Award, the Platinum Award, the Silver Pedestrian Award or Walking Award, and the Gold Bicycle Award. And I would propose that we should be looking for some type of a very high standard for that work. And I'm understanding that Director Marr has been working on this plan, and I wanted to ask him about what stage we are in the development of our tree plan.
Mr. Director of Public Works.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the councillor, thank you. Staff is currently in the process of reviewing the first draft of the policy. As I speak to you, it's on one of my other screens in my office here, so it is in draft form, but it is pen to paper, and we look forward to bringing a policy to council sometime in probably late winter, early spring.
Councillor Olson.
Yes, thank you. And it's got an appropriately high level of a high bar for qualifications, and I think it should be something in the nature of United Nations qualification as an urban tree city or something of that nature.
Any comment, Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, in 2000, a little bit of history. In 2000, there was the guideline, tree maintenance and preservation guideline that was put forward to the town. That guideline was adopted, but there was never a policy put in place regarding that guideline. In 2016, there was a policy that was approved by council with respect to the maintenance of our trees in our urban canopy. So the policy that town staff are going to be bringing forward to council would be more reflective of the original guidelines that were put in place or adopted back in 2000. With all due respect to the staffing resources and equipment resources and financial resources that the town has to maintain our trees and our urban tree canopy. So it'll bear that in mind as well. But the policy is definitely, the draft policy I'm looking at right now is definitely a much more robust policy than what is currently adopted by council.
Councillor Olson, any further comments?
No, I yield the floor. Thank you.
Okay. Councillor Kaur.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. to the director. Would the gypsy moth be a part of that?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the town of, this council actually approved a gypsy moth management policy last year. That policy specifically deals with how the town deals with our gypsy moth policy issue. What this policy, tree management policy, it does include a section there for invasive species and invasive, so this policy will address invasive species and other health factors affecting our trees and canopies, not specifically related to gypsy moth. We have a separate policy for that that's adopted by this council.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? I guess myself, I have a question to the director. So the steps, and you bring this to council, and when will the public have the time to comment on this work? Oh, okay. I see Mr. CAO.
Council, a report's probably more important than the policy even is the report that's going to wrap around it and come to you, late March, early April in there. As Mr. Maher said, either late winter, early spring. And that's going to give you some options. And of course, the night it comes to you, there's no need to make any sort of decision. You control the process. So it will be open to you to pass a policy, but you may also will identify some potential options for further steps that may be of some interest to this council. So when that report becomes public, it will reflect the thoughts of a number of, the entirety of the staff with our best advice to you and options for your consideration. And at that point in time, council can choose from those options, and that will include varying degrees of public participation. So the report's the key document as far as your next steps. And frankly, you have control of the process. So you'll be telling us what the next steps will involve, but we'll give you some choices, and hopefully they'll be satisfactory to you.
Excellent. Thank you. I know that there's this report is going to be under heavy scrutiny of the public, and I know that they will want to have a chance to comment and make any recommendations that they see will improve it. So council no doubt will be looking forward to this report. The tree canopy is a very important discussion piece in this town, that's for sure. Any other comments, Mr. Olson, or are we ready to move on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. No more on that matter.
And before we do move on, any councilor have anything else to add on this subject? Okay, thank you. Councilor Olson?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor.
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry, sir. Madam Clerk.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, we still do need to receive that item of correspondence because it was lifted.
Okay.
So on a motion by Councillor Kaur, seconded by Councillor Wink, be it resolved that Council receive the correspondence dated December 15th, 2020 from Mike Jones, Pelham Tree Conservation Society, regarding the Town of Pelham tree policy under development for information. And so I will call the vote, again, starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
Thank you. That motion carries.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item is item 8.5.6, letter of objection to conditions of approval from Saffron Valley Phase 2, and the responses associated thereto.
Councilor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I wanted to take these two items together because I found them most instructive on the process of objections to approvals and the responses to those objections. In particular, the items that were shared with homeowners in the town of, or the city of Guelph, I believe it was, and their roles and responsibility in protecting the wildlife and the flora and fauna in the community, including pictures and documentation about protecting, dogs and wild animals and that types of things. And these were provided to homeowners who had purchased their homes. And it strikes me that this is an excellent opportunity, an excellent example of something that we could make use of and have our bike trails and our wetlands maps all included all together for new residents to the community. So that's, I'm not recommending it, but I'm commending it for consideration for future.
Thank you, Councillor. Any other councillor have any comments on this lifted item? Not seeing any. I just think that it's a great idea to look at for sure, and possibly in the moving ahead could be adopted by the town. Thank you, Councillor. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So if there are no proposed changes to the motion, I will, the motions are to receive the letter of objection to conditions of approval regarding Saffron Valley Phase 2 dated January 5th, 2021 from Upper Canada Consultants and related correspondence for information, and also that council receive the letter of response to the objection of conditions regarding the Saffron Valley Phase 2 dated January 5th from the Niagara region and related material for information.
Okay.
So starting with, because it's part of the consent agenda, we'll go back to starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda, and just for the record, I did read both of those items, 9.2 and 9.2.1 together as they were part of the consent agenda. The next item on the agenda is staff reports requiring action. The first report is the 2021 draft capital budget update, moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Hahn. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0015 corporate services, and further that council approve the amendment in this report to the draft 2021 capital budget, and that council pass the 2021 capital budget as so amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions.
Yep. Any comments, questions on this? I see Councillor Hildebrand.
First of all, I'd like to congratulate the treasurer and her department for the great amount of work they did in achieving that $1 million plus gift that the voice reported is coming down the chimney. I don't think it was coming down the chimney. It came down because a couple people did a lot of hard work. Only 4 of the 12 municipalities got it because of the regional positions I hold. Not all the people that wanted it or provided some information got it. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for this. The second part is, I'm not disagreeing with approving the capital budget, but since I've had some time, I started looking at some of the items, and I started looking at the replacement of the water lines for $200,000 and the $492,000 ask for the park and Marlene Stewart, the pad. And here's what I got. When I got elected, the story goes on a little bit, and the questions are going to come to the treasurer, Public Works Director, and the Rec Director. I did take a look through all of our facilities. One of the facilities I took a look at was the pool, and I believe it's about 60 plus years old. I know that before I got elected, they had just replaced the filters, the boiler, and upgraded that. But the pump was not changed at the time because I was told at the time, if I changed the pump, then the criteria for recirculation of water in the pool would be changed, and there would be a big effect on it. This is just my memory talking. I don't have that as fact. It's just what I remember being told at the time. I know at the bottom they have a region collections station, which has a capacity for when no matter what kind of splash pad we have, and there's various types of splash pads. There's fresh water, there's the drain tank pipe, and there's also spray or what they call the new type of splash pad, which is different. So all of them have different things. And then there's an infrastructure cost, which is the water line going to this pad of $200,000. So what I did is I took a look at, does the town have an overall rec plan for all this stuff? Because really we're talking more than just the pool. We're talking about the lighting, the diamonds, and all this kind of stuff. And I guess I've got a list of questions that I came across that I'd like to just have a discussion on before I approve the capital budget. Maybe, because I know there's a red circle on the splash pad and on the water pipe, depending on what the grant says. And possibly the treasurer can talk about that grant later on. But what I did was I looked for a rec plan. What does the plan have for the town? Where should the pool be? Is the pool in the right place and all this kind of stuff? So I couldn't find anything online, and I didn't have time to really call anybody. And I know Vicki isn't here, and I'm not saying that I wanted to put Ryan on the spot for asking what the rec plan was, because you know he's been put in a position. But what I did do is I figured the plan would be in our budget, because the budget must reflect the plan that we have for 10 years. And it sort of surprised me, because for this coming year, we got the splash pad and pavilion for $491. Obviously, we're doing the lighting at Diamond 3 for $345. And then I continue down through the plan, and I found that in 28, we still got $3.5 million in for the Warnock and Central Park, and that included a splash pad. And I see but we are replacing the pool in 2026. So I think I'm not sure whether we have an overall plan, but I'm not sure putting the splash pad down in the gully at this time is the right place to put it, because unless we got an overall plan, how do we know that that's the right place? Because there's obviously issues like parking and obviously operating costs, unless you know what kind of thing you're getting, and do we have the drainage capacity down below to handle it from the region? So I guess the first question is, with this grant, when is the grant expected, and is it something that we're going to have to do in 2021? Because obviously I think that changes our position as a council as to what we should do. But obviously there is some kind of plan somewhere, because we got the Warnorth, and I know that that's a splash pad for the MCC that's still in our budget. So maybe we can have a discussion starting with the treasurer, telling me what the grant specifies and what we're really applying for.
Madam Treasurer?
To you, Mr. Mayor, and to council. The grant that we have applied for, and we're still waiting to hear whether we're going to get approved. This grant application, the information went to council on October 7th, 2019. We submitted the grant application for Investing in Canada Infrastructure Program Community Culture and Recreation Stream in November 16th of 2019. So the grant is from June 1st, 2021 to December 31st, 2027. So it's a very long period of a grant, 6 years. We have 6 years to do the various projects, and it does include the replacement of the pool in the last year, and it includes the splash pad. You know, with discussion with the Director of Recreation, Vicki, it makes sense to have a splash pad near a pool, because you have you know, kids that are swimming in the pool, and then the younger kids and their families can use the splash pad. So most parks do have splash pads with the swimming pools. So that's why the submission included that. The total amount of the grant that we requested is over $2.3 million. That's the grant portion that we've asked for. And right now, it's still under consideration. We have not received any notification that this project has been not allowed. Right now, it's still open for possibly, our fingers crossed, approval. I don't know if that helps.
Councillor Hildebrand?
That helps a lot. Well, did we define where the pool was gonna be? Because when I look at the overall town, and I don't have the plan, but to me, it seems like Fenwick and Centennial Park is the area where we've got growth going on in Found Hill now. And I'm not saying the splash pad, I'm not sure, but Centennial Park is the only park that I see really expandable and possibly the location of the future pool, because you have parking considerations and all kinds of things that go with this. I don't want to rush into a decision as to where to put a pad, and then a couple of years later, we do something else.
So,
go ahead.
to you, Mr. Mayor, to respond is that this application is the replacement of the current pool. So when we brought this to council on October 7th, 2019, no one raised that question to see, you know, should we be looking at a new location for the pool? As part of the submission, we had to submit maps of where the pool is, where the replacement of the pool was, where the splash pad was going. So we have all that information right now at the existing location. So if that's a different, if that's something that council needs to consider, it would be going against what the grant application is. So I don't know how that would work.
I'm not for that, obviously. And obviously at that time, I wasn't thinking about the big picture. You know, this is me not at the trying to second guess what we did. And I'm not saying it's the wrong location.
Okay.
I was just wondering how much work was done in planning what kind of pad and what we're planning. Like, there's a lot of stuff that goes on with these facilities.
Yeah, well, the actual, through you, Mr. Mayor, the actual planning of what the pad is, that part has not been done, because what we did is just, we said we want a splash pad, and we just put the submission in. And if we get approval, then we will move forward and look at the various designs of the splash pads. So we haven't done that. So I just want to also mention that the report that I submitted to council for the draft capital budget, I do need to put a note in there that the, you know, the WTR project, WTR 0621 is red circled for the $200,000 of the pipe that goes to the pool pending the grant. I didn't put it in the report. It was an oversight, but I want to make sure that the clerk knows that that is red circled.
Thank you. Councillor Hildebrand?
One other question, and I'm not sure who to address this to. I thought this council put an X beside the Warren order, and yet it's still in the budget for 2028 at $3.5 million.
Madam Treasurer, I thought that somewhere along the line we had scratched that from existence myself. Oh, I see Director of Planning, Ms. Weens.
Mr. Mayor, through you, you will recall, Council, that last year in April, you received a report on what was the design of the Warren-Irf, and at that time, Council decided that they did not want to proceed with that design. And so in this year's budget, in the planning budget, there is an item for hiring a consultant to come up with a new design for those lands, and then council will obviously participate in that process and will decide what that may look like in terms of the lands. Those are lands that the town still owns. They are zoned and designated for open space use, but council needs to decide what that would be. And so we have money in this year's budget to figure that out.
Thank you for that clarification. Councillor Hildebrand, any other comments?
No, that's fine. Thank you so much.
Okay, and Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to Ms. Weens. We are doing a parking study, and obviously we all know that we are lacking parking in and around the MCC area. So that being said, that the land that the town does own, there's a high possibility that we will need to use some, if not most of that, for parking. So just kind of making sure that the sequence of events are happening in the right order here, because we don't need to. We've already dedicated money of $60,000 for parking study, and if we're going to use that for parking, then we're not going to have as much space then to do some other type of, whatever we want to call Warren-Irf type activity, because we won't have the space to do that. Is that not accurate?
Ms. Weems?
Mr. Mayor, through you, yes, we are undertaking a parking study, and so as part of that process, the consultants will be looking at the parking demands and needs at the MCC and where additional parking may be able to be utilized. And if the conclusion of that report means that the area that had been designated as the Wernurf would be used for parking, well, then we have to still proceed with what was that going to look like, what's the design, and so forth. So that work with the parking study is underway. It will be completed this spring, and so we won't be going out for an RFP for the design of that until we know what is the outcome of that parking study.
Okay, thanks very much. I just want to make sure we're going to get one done and have a result before we start the next. Thank you very much for that.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson? No, you're muted, sir.
I hate when that happens. Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Director Marr, on schedule or table 7, item RD 0921, which is stormwater SWM ponds for $20,000. Now, I suppose that I'm supposing by the number that that's more of an exploratory type of a project you have ongoing there, but that's my supposition. Is that correct, or?
Through you, Mr. Mayor.
Director?
Yes, that's. Sorry, through you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, that's correct. It'll be. We just completed a stormwater management study, kind of gave us the condition of our stormwater management ponds. So the $20,000 would be used to securing additional engineering services to come up with a rehabilitation and maintenance plan for those ponds moving forward.
Councillor Olson?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. And so this will the stormwater ponds, will they be included on the fixed asset register and the forecast when that comes out? And I believe the time is midsummer, sometime like that.
Madam Treasurer?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it is they are part of the asset management plan, yes.
Okay.
And correct, and they should be, it should be done by July.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Now, it strikes me that that this is going to be a fairly expensive proposition, the maintenance and periodic rehabilitation of these of the ponds. I'm wondering if our reserves, we should be building a reserve around these things, because I predict that these are going to be quite expensive, and I'd ask the treasurer for her comments on that if I could.
Madam Treasurer?
Well, through you, Mr. Mayor, we everyone knows the state of the reserves, and so any contributions to the reserves is definitely something that will benefit the town. We don't have anything right now for the stormwater ponds, and as the Director of Public Works mentioned, we just completed the condition of the ponds, so that the stormwater pond, so that will tell us what the deferred maintenance is on that. So maybe that will be helpful information to determine what level of the reserves that we need for the stormwater ponds.
Thank you. Councillor Olson?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. That's all my questions.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? I see Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor to Director of Public Works. Just looking at number RD 1721, and this is the street safety signage improvement. You've got a number of streets listed there. My understanding was one of them, I know this was on my wish list, and I think at some point in time you and I had corresponded about this, and that was Merritt. So you've got Welland on there, Welland Road, Port Robinson Road, with regards to the speed zone indicator signs, and also just noticing that Merritt's not listed. Is that just an oversight?
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, it may be an oversight or not specifically a road written in that description. The $44,500 will be used there's some specific signs that were part of a report to council with respect to speed indicator signs and flashing warning signs for Effingham Street, as well as one at the end of Canberra Road in Fenwick. And then based on, I think that was around 21,500, somewhere in that range. I can't remember off the top of my head. But you made also the request to have additional portable speed zone signs that can be installed throughout the town. And we have taken that into consideration as part of this budget item. So I think we're looking at getting 4 more. But those can be moved around to different locations as well. They don't have to be a permanent fixture on those roads.
So further to that, then the ones that we've listed here, you've listed here on Welland, Port Robinson Road, those are permanent speed indicator signs, or those are the portable, like they're portable to be used on those roads? You know what I mean? Because we've always got issues with Port Robinson, like it's nonstop issues with speeding on Port Robinson. So is that like a dedicated unit to be moved around on that road, or is that a unit for the entire town of Pelham?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, the units that we were looking at purchasing would be the similar to the ones we purchased this past year, which can be affixed to a pole on a roadway. It's more of a, it's not a speed zone sign indicator that's sitting on the side of the road. It's actually fixed to a pole, which could remain there for long periods of time, or we could use those, relocate those to other areas within the town.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councilor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, on the topic of Merritt Road, is there an update on the schedule for those projects? I believe there's 2 projects are listed as the Merritt Road Corridor 37-1, which is the Rice Road to Niagara, and it's going to be a new road. And then there's 37.2, which is Niagara Street to Highway 406, and I presume with an interchange there.
Director?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. So we are the town of Pelham and the engineering department. We're on the stakeholder list for the Niagara region. They're currently completing the environmental assessment, municipal class environmental assessment for the extension of Merritt Street from Rice Road to the 406. So I think, if I understand you correctly, those are the projects that you're speaking of. So we haven't had any meetings yet. They are in the initial stages of that study, and we'll be obviously participating as part of that study.
And Councilor Olson, any more questions?
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that answer. So this presumably is to take the load off of Highway 20 and probably Port Robinson, I guess. And that's going to be a busy road, I think.
Director?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, obviously the results of the environmental assessment study will show what impacts that's going to have to the local road network in Pelham. They'll be doing, as part of their study, they'll be doing traffic studies to determine what impacts would be on our local municipal roads. But yes, we anticipate that if there is a direct connection to the 406, that would take more traffic than it currently is, and divert traffic from both Port Robinson Road and Highway 20. We are planning, staff are planning, and looking at urbanization and road reconstruction of Merritt Road. It's within our 10-year forecast. I don't have the actual year when we are looking at doing those designs, but we'll definitely wait for the results of Niagara Region study to determine even if that's the most plausible course of action for them. And then we will look at what infrastructure improvements we have to make on our local roads to support that.
Thank you. Are you finished, Councilor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I see Councilor Hahn.
Through the mayor, just further to the question that you were asking Councillor Olson about the Merritt. As far as a time frame, I had some correspondence with Carolyn Ryle, who's the director at the region for transportation, through our regional councillor as well. And 2025 is the time frame. So yes, there's environmental assessments being done right now, but 2025 is the estimated time frame of completion of that section from Rice to the 406.
Okay, any other comments? See Madame Treasurer.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I did receive a text from our Director of Recreation just to provide an update to the question that Councillor Hildebrand asked about with regards to the Marlene Stewart Street Park. We do have a master plan for that particular park that includes a new pool, a pavilion, and a splash pad. That's part of the master plan that we have. We also have a master plan for Centennial Park, and it does not include a pool. I just wanted to provide council with an update.
Thank you for that.
Sorry, and part of this grant does include the pavilion. So this grant that we're waiting for is a pavilion, a splash pad, and the replacement of the pool by 2027.
Okay, thank you for that update. Any other questions on this budget item? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through you. So as council is aware, the motion is to approve the amendment in the report to the draft 2021 capital budget, and the council passed the 21 capital budget as so amended. So this vote will start with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries unanimously. Mr. Mayor, the next agenda item is 10.2.2, 2021 draft operating budget update. Be it resolved that council receive report 2021-0014 corporate services, and further that council approve the amendment in this report to the draft 2021 operating budget, and that council pass the 2021 operating budget as amended, and that's on a motion by Councillors Kaur and Wink. To you, Mr. Mayor, for discussion and questions.
Okay. Any discussion on the operating budget? Councillor Wink.
So just piggybacking on what Councillor Hildebrand said with respect to the capital budget, I held off my comment because the money that we received, the $1.298 million of the Safe Restart Phase 2 funding, is going towards operations of the town. And I want to commend Teresa and Charlotte and the other staff for submitting a successful grant application, and kudos to them. As a result of their efforts, proposed tax increase is going to be 1.98% as opposed to 4.59%, which was projected. So this is an amazing accomplishment, and really thank you for what you've done for the town.
Welcome.
Thank you for those comments, Councillor, and I'm sure all of Council shares those accolades given to the Finance Department. Thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, this vote starts with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion passes. To you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is 10.2.3, recommendation report for applications for Saffron Valley Phase 2 at 1304 Rice Road. Moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Olson, that council receive report 2021-06 for information as it pertains to file numbers 26 CD 190220, OPAM 0220, and AM 0620, and that council directs planning staff to prepare the bylaws for approval of the draft plan of condominium, official plan, and zoning bylaw amendments for council's consideration. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions of the director.
Any comments or questions on this? I'm not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
So the vote on this report will begin with Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. To you, Mr. Mayor, the next item is site plan control, SP 09-2020, 1768 Balfour Street. Moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0010 for information pertaining to site plan control application file SP 09-2020, and that Council consider approval of the bylaw to authorize the Mayor and Clerk to enter into a site plan agreement between the town and Warringah Greenhouses Limited. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or comments?
Any questions, comments on this site plan control? I would just like to state that it's great to see a agricultural endeavor such as this expand his operation. They run a very big operation as it is, a good size for this community, and it's nice to see it is a family-owned operation, and it's nice to see they're continuing to move ahead. Good job, guys. Any other comments? Councilor Olson, are you just adjusting your volume?
I was making sure my mute was off, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
Yes,
go ahead.
I share those sentiments through you, Mr. Mayor. I think our agricultural businesses are really doing a great job, and they're probably going to recover faster than the other businesses in the pandemic. And the work they're doing is to be commended. So I will be voting in favor of the motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any other questions or comments? Not seen any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote will start with Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. To you, Mr. Mayor, moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-0011, Corporate Services, and that Council approve the establishment of a reserve for human resources capacity building with the purpose, funding sources, and drawdowns as outlined in the report. And further, that this reserve be effected for the year ended December 31st of 2020. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Any comments, questions on this report? On this ask, I guess. Councilor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to speak in favor of establishing a reserve, because I understand that it's going to be funded by vacancy resources, and that to me is a wise way of doing this. And I think at particular points in time, these types of things are desirable, and I will vote almost any time when the reserve is added to the title of the thing. So I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Good comment. Anytime we can build reserves and it's not going to cost the taxpayer any money, then that's got to be great. No one likes to see vacancies, but they are already in the budget. So when they do occur, it is a wise move, I would think, to put this money into reserve for HR. Any comments you wish to make, Mr. CAO?
If there are no questions, no. Thank you, though.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions or comments? Not seen any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, and that was on a motion by Councillor Stewart and Kaur. And the vote would start with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries unanimously. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda, moved by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that Council receive Report 2021-003, Town Benefits Policy Amendment, and that Council approve the Benefit Plans Policy S600-01 as amended. To you, Mr. Mayor, for questions or comments.
Any questions, comments? on this report? Not seen any. Oh, I see Councillor Hildebrand.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, maybe the CEO can speak to the analysis and the recommendation to provide more clarification.
Mr.
Please
CEO?
do. Council, I should also note Ms. Langor, who put in a fair bit of time into and has been working on the files, of course, wrote much of the report and is also present. Really, what I want to say is that, we took the immediate situations at hand and then tried to step back and say, well, what fits in with the town's value system? What's commercially reasonable? And then what's done by other area municipalities? And when you ask yourself those three questions, and then of course, Ms. Langor reached out to other municipalities in Niagara, and we've sort of, and this was the answer we settled on. It's, on the one hand, when you find, when persons get to the point that WSIB declares them as being unable to do any job, there is at that point in time, the employment contract is frustrated, but also someone's in a very bad place. And your choices range from, you're off the benefits right away to benefits for life. And we, at least when we looked at sort of the town's value system and what we think people might reasonably expect, that neither of those extremes seems reasonable. I don't think people signed up for benefits for life. Alternatively, I don't think when you particularly need your benefits because there's some sort of major health concern, whatever that may be, is the time that you should find yourself without them. And this, the policy before you is attempting to split that difference, both to respect the taxpayer, but also to help people who had staff members and are in need. That would be my general strategic commentary and why we landed where we did. I hope that answers the question. I hope the report sort of is fairly clear, but if I've missed any, please ask further.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes, to the CEO, thanks. The general question is, when does a person make that decision whether they want to continue on or not? Is that extended forever, or is it within a certain time period that he makes that decision?
Mr. CAO?
Oh, I'll have to defer. Well, I mean, it's going to be fact dependent, right? And a bunch of that has to do with a third party process we don't directly control. Ms. Langard, anything you want to add to clarify to that?
Yeah.
I mean, we don't control the speed at which people apply or WSIB makes decisions. So part of my answer has to be depends.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor, it's going to be based on an estimate. We typically receive notice that people are disabled from any occupation around the 24-month mark, give or take. And then we figured having this decision made at the 30-month mark would be best. That would give them 6 months to go over their options, figure out if they want to pay their own premiums or have enough time to look into alternative benefit packages. But either way, at the end of the 30 months, the town would no longer be paying those benefits, and should the staff member decide to stay on, they're able to continue with the benefits that they've become accustomed to.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions, comments? Not seeing any. I turn to the clerk.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the vote would start with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the presentation and consideration of bylaws, seeing that no unfinished business or new business was added to the agenda at the beginning of the meeting. So, moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that Council of the Town of Pelham, having given due consideration to the following bylaws, do now read a first, second, and third time and do pass same. and that the mayor and clerk be and are hereby authorized to sign and seal the bylaws. 1. Bylaw 4306 being a bylaw to provide for an interim tax levy for the year 2021. Bylaw 4307 2021, delegation of authority being a bylaw to delegate certain powers and duties under the Municipal Act and other acts as contained in the schedules hereto. And bylaw 4308 being a bylaw to authorize the execution of a site plan agreement for the lands located at 1768 to 1770 Belfour Street, Warringah Greenhouses Limited, file SP09 2020. To you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Any comments, questions on these, any number of these bylaws? Councillor Wink.
So through you, Mr. Mayor, 4307-22 or 2021 delegation of authority. Very extensive document, and really haven't had a good chance to wrap my head around it. But how does this compare to other municipalities with respect to delegation of authority?
Mr. CAO?
This is the culmination of 10 months of work. And shout out to our deputy clerk, Holly Wilford, who's on the call, and to Nancy Bizzato in particular. But every member of SLT, the clerk, the deputy clerk, and I, it took us 10 months. I think we reviewed 27 other bylaws. And that was from Sioux Lookout to Windsor, Ottawa, London, Norfolk County, the region. I remember looking at Vaughan's. It just went on and on and on. And I think this is as well drafted and as exhaustively written as any in the province of Ontario. I put this up against any, and I think we can go toe to toe. So this was one of the action items under the strategic plan and has been approved twice by this council in the last 12 months. It reflects the sort of totality, maybe not the totality, but it reflects things that we at least felt were appropriate for Pelham relative to our size and the way we operate. There isn't a single item on here that is invented by Pelham that isn't taken from somewhere else. So there's no originating, nothing unique to the town of Pelham that doesn't exist in at least one of the other 443 municipalities in Ontario. We are not inventing a wheel. We did sort of survey to find the sort of best practices and best drafting mechanism. And this is where we landed after we started this prior to COVID and finished it 6 weeks ago, thereabouts. First week of December, maybe, something like that.
Councillor Wink?
No, thank you for your response, Mr. Cripps.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to the CAO. I was looking at schedule. I read it in quite a bit of detail, and I believe it's very well done, the whole thing. I had three specific questions. Schedule B, item 8, records management oversight. Would that include the engineering drawings as well, the records and the changes to engineering drawings as well?
Well, I'm going to defer part of my answer to the clerk. I can tell you, though, that from my clerking dates, at the end of the day, there always has to be one cook in the kitchen. And fundamentally, that person needs to be the clerk with respect to how records are held. Now, each director, and I guess myself to an extent, have responsibility for how documents are handled within their own areas. We've done corporate training for staff well outside of clerks. Most staff at Town Hall, I feel comfortable saying most staff at Town Hall have now taken some training on records management, and there are at least 4 of us with certification in records management. So there is a part of that responsibility goes to every member of SLT, but at the end of the day, the person responsible for policy and for execution and for training is the clerk. Ms. Bizzato, do you have anything to add to that?
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. No, that pretty much sums it up unless there are any further questions. Each department does, we don't have central records in the town of Pelham, so each department does maintain their records, but many of the more corporate records like agreements and that sort of thing are maintained by the clerk's department. But each department does have training and does have custody over their separate files.
Councillor Olson?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I always found that the difficulty in records management was in the change management, right, going from one engineering level to another level. That was always the part that seemed to fall down. So I suspect that would be, from your answer, I guess that would be Director Marr, who is responsible for the engineering documentation and the changes.
Before Mr. Marr responds, it's very important to note that we do have a very robust records management bylaw which dictates the duration, the life cycle of a record. So even if we are going through different iterations of a document, there would be retentions on each version of the document, and that's complied with, and using citations throughout through the bylaw.
Does the Director of Public Works want to add anything?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, no, I'm satisfied with the clerk's answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson, any other points?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, thank you. Schedule F and Schedule C, I was looking for a statement of the management of trust funds. The town has fiduciary responsibility over trust funds, I suppose, at the cemetery. Who's responsible for that? Is that the treasurer?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, that is correct.
Okay, thank you. And then the other one was, through you, Mr. Mayor, the Schedule E, I was looking for some kind of a statement about the winter parking laws under the task for the chief. And is that where that falls, under the chief? Declaring winter parking?
Mr. CAO, perhaps? Or is
Well,
it
ultimately, Bob's area is responsible for enforcement. I'm not sure about the declaration itself. Actually, I don't know the answer to that question, but I'm sure either Chief Lindberner or possibly Director Marr know the answer to that. Maybe Clerk Pizzato?
Madam Clerk?
So we do have a comprehensive parking bylaw, and the CAO is correct in that the enforcement for winter parking is through the Chief's department with bylaw enforcement. Chief Lindberner, do you have anything additional to add to respond to the councillor?
I'm just trying to think of the winter control operations is under the parking bylaw 89/2000, which kind of covers all our parking. The winter operations is pretty well dictated by Public Works when they decide to go out for road maintenance for plowing, sanding, salting. That kicks that bylaw in. There might be, or I should say, there is some rare circumstances where I can cancel a ticket, but and the reviewing officer can do the same thing. That pretty well holds it to those two people.
Okay, thank you.
And through you, Mr. Mayor, that is through the standalone municipal penalties bylaw.
Okay. Did that answer your questions, Councillor Olson?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, this is, I think this is an extremely worthwhile exercise. It's something, roles and responsibilities has a huge importance in any organization. I think this is an excellent job here.
Okay, thank you for your comments. Any other questions, comments from any councillors? Not seeing any, I turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Mayor. So for the vote on the bylaws, we'll start with Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes?
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that motion is carried. Through you, Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is the motion with regard to the Niagara Central Dorothy Rundling Airport Commission funding. I understand there may be a request to refer the motion to a future meeting, so I'll turn it over. The original motion was made by Councillor Olson and seconded by Councillor Wink.
I'm sorry.
So, Councillor Olson, do you wish me to read the motion into the record, and then you can make a motion to refer it?
Councillor Olson?
Yes, if you could do that, read it into the record and defer it to the next meeting. And I will supply the required documents to Councillor Hahn.
So the motion as stated on the agenda, moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Whereas the funding request from the Niagara Central Dorothy Rundling Airport Commission for the year 2021 remains the same as the 2020 request in the amount of $154,770. And whereas the 2021 funding request contains a depreciation amount of $80,000, and whereas depreciation is a non-cash expense item, and whereas the removal of depreciation from the 2021 NCDRAC funding request would not create operational or financial difficulties for the Airport Commission, now therefore be it resolved that the Pelham Town Council approves the Niagara Central Dorothy Rundling Airport Commission funding request in the amount of $74,770, such amount being $154,770 minus depreciation of $80,000, resulting in the Town of Pelham's municipal contribution in the amount of $13,459. And Councillor Olson has stated a request to refer the motion to a future meeting, and that will need a seconder.
And I see Councillor Wink will second.
So if there is any discussion on the motion to refer, and I do see Councillor Hahn has her hand raised.
Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, thank you. I just wanted to reiterate again, the ask, which was the same ask as last year from the town of Pelham, is $27,828, because that number actually isn't placed into the motion that was just read, so it could be confusing, especially to those folks at home that are watching tonight, that's the ask, and it was frozen to last year's rates. And also to respond to Councillor Olson. So I'll wait to receive that list of information that you request, and we'll forward that through to the chair of the commission.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Any other discussion on the referral? Not seen any. You turn to the clerk.
So without having a date to bring this back, we would look for the member of council who raised the motion and placed the motion on the agenda to put the motion back on when he's satisfied with the information. So the motion is to refer to a future date, refer the consideration. Okay, no further discussion, so I will call for the vote, starting with Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
Yes.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
Councillor Hahn?
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin?
Yes.
And that carries. So the motion is referred. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is a motion with regard to the Town of Pelham Trail System, and it's a motion by Councillor Wink, seconded by Councillor Hildebrand. Councillor Wink, do you wish to present your motion, or do you wish me to read it into the record?
No, I'll read it.
Thank you.
So, whereas the provincial government launched the Ontario Trail Strategy, that is a long-term plan that establishes strategic direction for planning, managing, promoting, and use of trails in Ontario. And whereas trails play an important role in building a healthier, more prosperous Ontario. And whereas Section 1.5.1 of the Provincial Statement 2020 states healthy, active communities should be promoted by A, planning public streets, spaces, and facilities to be safe, meet the needs of pedestrians, foster social interaction, and facilitate active transportation and community connectivity. B, planning and providing for a full range and equitable distribution of publicly accessible built and natural settings for recreation, including facilities, parklands, public spaces, open space areas, trails and linkages, and where practical, water-based resources. C, providing opportunities for public access to shorelines. And D, recognizing provincial parks, conservation reserves, and other protected areas, and minimizing negative impact on these areas. And whereas good trails play a vital role in our well-being by supporting an active lifestyle that improves health, trails attract tourists to our community, trails build strong communities that strengthen our social fabric, and trails conserve and appreciate the environment. And whereas the Steve Bauer Trail has been in existence for over 20 years and is public property owned by the town of Pelham, and whereas the Jerry Burkhout Trail has been in existence for over 2 years and is public property owned by the town of Pelham, and whereas these trails provide safe areas to increase trail use by all community residents, including children, youth, seniors, and persons with a disability. And whereas the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic has increased the demand for safe, accessible trails to the point that the trails are one of the most utilized public spaces in Pelham. And whereas our town's ecosystems and natural features need to be preserved. Now, therefore, be it resolved that no new road crossings over the Steve Bauer Trail or the Jerry Burkhout Trail shall be permitted by the town. And further be it resolved that the town shall not dedicate any portion of the Steve Bauer Trail or the Jerry Burkhout Trail as a public highway. And further be it resolved that the Pelham Town Council endorses the preservation of the Steve Bauer Trail and the Jerry Burkhout Trail as they currently exist. So just a few comments around the motion. Firstly, I'd like to thank the overwhelming support of our residents. They sent numerous emails to council and apologize not getting back to those residents and acknowledging their comments, but their comments were certainly well received by council. I also want to state that I did have conversation with the developer of both developments on either side of the Steve Bauer Trail, and we had an extensive conversation today, which I felt went very well, but didn't change my recommendation at this point. I will state that as part of Newton's law, every action will have a reaction. The action of approving this motion will have a cause and effect on some of the density requirements on these proposed developments. So it's not a complete good news story for the residents. They will be concerned that the densities will have to increase in these subdivisions, but in order to protect the trail, this is a consequence of what's going to happen. So I'd like to go on record to say I'm not against development. Development is going to happen in the town, but the trails are town property. They are extremely utilized by town residents. We need to have safe access to our trails, and I feel it detrimental to trail users to have roadways cut across our trails. it's been brought up that trails are streets cross our trails throughout the town. I would suggest that the streets were there prior to the trails being made. Here we're having a situation where we have a trail and being asked to put in streets, and I find that's just not safe. The final point is with respect to our natural resources and our green space and the flora and fauna around the trails, that they need to be protected. So thus, those are my comments and the reason for this motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Hildebrand, you were the seconder on this. Would you like to speak to it?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to echo Councillor Wink's comments. I'm in total agreement with him. If you saw my election picture, it's had me at the front of the Steve Bauer Trail with my bike, because that's what I truly believe in. And this is one of those areas. I realize there's going to be density issues. I realize it's going to change the subdivision plan. However, the number of people that have contacted me, not only in Fond Hill, but in Fenwick, has been enormous. And I'm a 100% supporter of this motion.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor. Any questions, comments on this motion? Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I also am in agreement with Councillor Wink and Councillor Hildebrand. And one of my issues with the development, which I know is inevitable, is that it has seemed that for many, many years, not just this term of council, but predating us by probably decades, development, which I believe should be guided by the town, has so often been guided by the for-profit developers, telling the town what they wanted. And I think it's time for us, as the supposed leaders of the town, to say, okay, this is the way we need our town to grow. And if you want to develop here, then you need to fit in with our guidelines. We should not have to fit in with theirs. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Corr.
Yes, well spoken, Councillor Stewart. Appreciate it. And I also appreciate the work that Mr. Wink and Councillor Wink and Councillor Hildebrand put into this, and I will fully support this motion.
Okay, Councillor Hahn.
Through the mayor, yes, thank you very much, Councillor Wink and Councillor Hildebrand, for doing a lot of legwork on this. Councillor Wink, you said that you had reached out to both the developers, and so in particular the developer Sterling that would be on the west side of the trail. Just wondering if any of the conversation, or perhaps at this point, if you're willing to say, if any of the conversation turned to another entrance area, because at this point in time, I'm fully in favor of protecting the trail under all circumstance. However, I also recognize that at this point it would allow just one exit and entrance to that subdivision. So I'm wondering if any of the conversation you had with Sterling turned to having another entrance. I know we've got at the very end of the schoolyard, there's that area that I guess has some archaeological artifacts. Just wondering if there's been discussion at all in regards to that area, or if there's another area they have in mind at this point in time. It's too premature at this point.
Yeah, so to be clear, the same owner owns both Kunda Park and Forest Park. So, but I did speak to him about alternative access. We had a discussion for an hour and a half, so to recap that entire discussion, it is going to be difficult. But yeah, as far as alternatives, one is that strip of land that goes directly out to Port Robinson Road. That's not a viable alternative, not so much because of the archaeological concerns, but for the traffic concerns, because you're going to have access onto Port Robinson Road there, and just, I'm not sure the distance, but the extension of Station Street is being proposed, and traffic flow just doesn't fit. Another alternative, and someone from the active transportation made a suggestion. He said maybe the school board can be approached to see if we could or if the developer can utilize some of the lands there. He did make that approach and was denied. The DSBN is not willing to sell off any of their lands. But there is an option that apparently he obtained ministry approval to run a road across the wetlands. Not sure how far that will go and if he will get that, but that is an alternative. And I agree with you, Councillor Hahn, that one entrance to that subdivision is not ideal. So there should be another alternative.
Thanks very much for that.
So it was a good discussion, and in all honesty, we talked about Councillor Stewart's motion a few weeks ago or a few meetings ago about the possibility of adopting something like Burlington Council has with respect to a more conciliatory approach prior to getting deeply into a planning stage. And, I think this is the first time that we as a council have talked about the crossing of the Steve Bauer Trail, and some people may say that it's staff may say it's premature. We should have let the process play out, but again, this is our land. This is town property, and we're not obligated to give up town property for developers.
Okay, thank you. I would just like to make a comment, and then I'll ask the Director of Planning. Councillor, you did mention the Pelham Active Transportation Committee. They have indeed reviewed the initial plans. And Director of Planning, Ms. Weens, could you talk about that part of the equation?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, through you, we did have 2 meetings with the Active Transportation Committee. They reviewed the draft plan submissions for both Kunda Park and Forest Park. And we met with them in June and discussed it at length. The Active Transportation Committee understood the benefit of the connections, because one of the connections is Walker Road, which will have a dedicated bike lane that will connect through to the trail. And they see that as enhancing the pedestrian and cycling network in the town. And the other access will be across from a park, which will get people to the park, and again is considered to be beneficial in terms of getting people out onto the trail and access to the park. So while there was concerns about what those crossings will look like, we had certainly indicated to them and committed that when we get to the detailed design, the design of those crossings would be reviewed with the Active Transportation Committee. And so they did not object to the crossings, but they did want to see the detailed design for that work. I understand that they continue to meet. There is a member on the committee that continues to raise this issue, and his issue is with respect to the vegetation removal. And it was made clear to the committee that the vast majority of the vegetation along the Steve Bauer Trail will stay. It's not proposed to be impacted significantly. While there would be tree removal where the two connections are proposed, it would likely be, well, I can tell you it's less than 5% of the area of the trail. So the amount of tree removal would be minimal. And then the developer certainly is committed to replanting and doing enhancements along the trail. So those were conversations and discussions that were had with the Active Transportation Committee.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, where exactly do we stand right now in the planning process, Director? We've got, I don't think we have a finalized plan, do we not? I've only seen this twice myself, so.
Madam Director?
Mr. Mayor, through you, so you'll recall we had a public meeting on this matter. The consultants were making, and the applicant were making some revisions to the plan to address the public comments. There was, at the time of the public meeting, there was a number of comments about making sure that when we bring this plan to council for the draft plan approval, we bring it at the same time that we have Forest Park plan. So we are targeting getting those two reports to council on February 16th. That was the meeting date that we're targeting bringing this to you. And at that time, you will have you know, all the information that you need to make a decision on this issue. The crossings, while they provide for vehicular crossings and pedestrian crossings, they are important not only for this, but you also heard at the public meeting that the residents in Kunda Park did not want construction traffic going down Stella Street and John Street. So if council does not permit any crossings over the Steve Bauer Trail, all the construction traffic for Kunda Park will have to go through that existing street network. It will also mean that there's additional issues with respect to traffic operations that put more pressure on Pelham Street versus dispersing the traffic and creating additional issues that way. And then, as Councillor Wink indicated, an alternative is to go through the wetland, and we've heard about, you know, that is a provincially significant wetland and woodland, and so there would be some harmful destruction to that natural area, natural habitat. Whereas the crossings are not in the wetland and not in a significant part of the woodland, and so there would be less disruption to the natural environmental condition if you had the crossings. But there's a number of reasons for those crossings, and you know, certainly one of them, Councillor Stewart talked about, it wasn't the town's vision to have those crossings. Well, it actually is in the secondary plan for East Font Hill, and in the demonstration plans, they do illustrate one crossing over the Steve Bauer Trail. And so it is keeping with something that was approved through a public planning process previously. So I guess that's a long answer to your question, but we are looking at bringing a complete report to you on these two applications. Our goal was to get it to you on February 16th.
Councillor Wink? Councillor Wink? Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Councillor Olson.
Yes, through you, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Yes, I think I'm looking at the demonstration plan for land use dated November 3rd, 2011, and it clearly shows a crossing. Now, I guess it, you know, we can say that it's fine to have changes in density and all that. Shouldn't this go through the process and at least have public comment on these things? Because I think these are going to be quite significant changes that people are going to be faced, and the process is going to come to the next step in February 16th. I'd be willing to defer this till that time to see what could happen and consider this at the same time.
Councillor, is that a motion you're putting forward?
No, I'm just putting it out there because there are other things. There are, like apparently there's I would like to go on camera actually and have a conversation with our council because if we've created a plan here and a process and we're going to deviate from it, I'd like to have an opinion on that.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Mr. CAO, comments on that?
We're certainly capable of going in closed for you to receive legal advice.
Well, okay. Madam Clerk, does that require a vote of council?
Yes.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, anytime you go into closed session, you do require a motion to do so, and you have to cite the appropriate sections of the Municipal Act. So
Okay.
yes, it does require council approval.
Okay. Councillor Olson, are you going to put forward a motion?
I'll put forward a motion. We go in camera. I don't know the numbers, the sections. So
The sections would be Section 239-2E, litigation or potential litigation, including matters before administrative tribunals affecting the municipality, and F, advice that is subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose.
Okay. Thank you. Is there a seconder on this? Councillor Wink?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, I have no problem going through council for advice because, let's do that. I think it will clarify a few things.
Okay, thank you. Any comments or questions on the motion put before council? And it should be pointed out that two councillors have already been given advice that the rest of this council should, by rights, be entitled to. So, any other comments? I'm sorry, Councillor Stewart.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe this entire discussion should be in the public realm.
I believe that when we get legal advice on property, I believe it has to go in camera. Am I correct, Mr. CAO?
No, with respect, Your Worship, I don't feel you're correct about that.
Okay.
Council can choose to discuss and can choose to waive its privilege. That being said, if you wish it, I do advise you going in closed session to receive some legal advice on this topic. And I am entitled to give you that. I will give you that advice. And if for whatever reason you're disinclined to do that, then I'd like you to go in closed to receive legal advice about the implications of not going in camera to get legal advice when a lawyer advises you to do so.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Stewart?
Yes, thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor, I didn't mean, I don't even know what I mean, but I just meant that I don't believe we need to go in camera. I think we should just continue our discussion in public.
Okay, well, you'll have an opportunity to vote that way, Councillor.
Thank
Any
you.
other questions or comments? Not seeing any, I'll turn to the clerk.
Thank you, through Mr. Mayor. So we do have a motion by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that the next portion of the meeting be closed to the public in order to consider the following: an item with regard to litigation or potential litigation, and that's under Section 239-2E, and under Section 239-2F, advice subject to solicitor-client privilege, including communications necessary for that purpose. So I will call the vote, starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand?
Yes.
Councillor Kaur?
No.
Councillor Olson?
Yes.
Councillor Stewart?
No.
Councillor Wink?
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
The motion does carry. So just for information, for members of the public who may be viewing this by live stream, we will stop the live stream at this point. We will reinitiate the live stream when council has finished their closed session. So just stay near to your computers and you'll be able to see, or when we do restart, if you have subscribed to the live stream feature, you will get an email saying that the live stream has started again.
Thank you.
So council will just need to give me a moment to turn off the live stream.
Making sure that everything is set up on that end okay, and he will get back to me.
Okay, thank you. We'll wait to hear from you.
So it's telling me that the live stream is going. Oh, there we go. Oh. It appears that we were up and live streaming. Holly, can you just confirm that from where you are?
Yes, I can confirm. I now see that we are live streaming.
Okay, thank you, Holly. Madam Clerk?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
So the first motion then is moved by Councillor Olson, seconded by Councillor Wink. Be it resolved that council adjourn the in-camera session and the council do now rise with no report. Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
And that is carried. So members of council, we are back at the exact same place on the agenda as when we recessed to closed session, which is the consideration of Councillor Wink and Hildebrand's motion.
Okay, any other comments, questions on the motion before us? Not seeing any. I would like to read what I have prepared. I will not be supporting this motion, and as I believe it is to be premature by not following the process that has been approved by this council whenever we are faced with approving a subdivision development plan. If this process was to be followed, council would not make any such decisions until we had received a staff report which would inform council of any changes that the developer had made to his plans as a result of the public meeting which was held late last year, where council and town residents had voiced their concerns. At this next meeting, which is scheduled for the middle of February, staff would also give the recommendations to council. This motion also does not take into account the concerns of the residents on Stella Street or John Street, whom had expressed at the public meeting their concerns of increased traffic on the roads during construction and, of course, when the development is finished. As a council, I believe that we should always have all facts before us before making a decision, and all aspects of our decisions must be weighed very carefully, taking into consideration all members of the community. I can't even read my writing. I must stress that it is because of this deviation from process that I cannot support this motion. Thank you. Any other comments? Not seeing any, then I'll ask the clerk to call the vote. Oh, I see Councilor Olson.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, would it be appropriate to make a motion to defer this defer the matter to the February 13th meeting.
Madam Clerk?
Through you, yes, a motion is in order to refer this to the February 16th meeting. We will need a second on that.
Is there a seconder? I do not
seconder?
see one.
No seconder. So we are back to the vote on the motion as presented.
Can this be a recorded vote?
Yes, they are all recorded
They're all
votes
recorded
when
votes
we
now,
were
anyway.
during COVID.
Okay, thank you.
So this voting will start with Councillor Wink,
Yes.
Councillor Hahn,
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand,
Yes.
Councillor Kaur,
Yes.
Councillor Olson,
No.
Councillor Stewart,
Yes.
and Mayor Junkin.
No.
The motion does carry. Mr. Mayor, the next item on the agenda is coming up to the end of the agenda. We have the confirming bylaw, moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Kaur. Be it resolved that the following bylaw be read a first, second, and third time and passed, being bylaw 4309 of 2021, to adopt, ratify, and confirm the proceedings of Council of the Town of Pelham at its regular meeting held on the 11th day of January 2021. And starting with Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries. Mr. Mayor, the final motion is moved by Councillor Hahn, seconded by Councillor Stewart. Be it resolved that this regular meeting of council be adjourned until the next regular meeting scheduled for February 1st, 2021 at 5:30 p.m. Starting with Councillor Hildebrand.
Yes.
Councillor Kaur.
Yes.
Councillor Olson.
Yes.
Councillor Stewart.
Yes.
Councillor Wink.
Yes.
Councillor Hahn.
Yes.
And Mayor Junkin.
Yes.
That motion carries.
This meeting is adjourned. Good night, everyone.
Good night, all.
Right.
Good night.
I'm just going to stop the live stream, so just give it a moment.